The young couple mocked the homeless man on the street, but when he showed them an old photograph, they couldn't believe their eyes. Sometimes people are too immature to discern the line between good and evil. They can commit completely thoughtless, sometimes even terrible acts, without fully understanding whether they are right or wrong. And when it comes to those from troubled families, one might not even wonder. Such people are broken from a young age, accustomed to treating others the way their parents once treated them. Sophia and Jason were just such people. Their childhood left an indelible mark on their character, causing others to perceive them as unpredictable or even dangerous. They didn't feel stability or safety in their homes, which led to their growing up without understanding norms and boundaries. In their small world, their moral compasses pointed in the wrong direction. Each day was a struggle for survival, even if it meant crossing laws or ethical norms. They both felt lost, trying to find themselves and their place in a world that seemed hostile and incomprehensible. The girl grew up under constant psychological abuse from her own mother. Her mother, a true narcissist, saw her daughter's birth only as a tragedy. Childbirth had left her figure sagging, there was no more time to take care of herself, and men had lost interest in the single mother. In Sheila's eyes, her daughter became a living reminder of lost youth and freedom. Each day, the mother grew more angry and irritable, transferring her dissatisfaction with life onto Sophia's frail shoulders. "Mom, I'm home." The girl rushed into the house in high spirits. Today, there was a swimming competition at school that Sophia had been preparing for months. She might not have become the champion, but she was still happy to have won a prize. That's why she hurried home, wet, tired, but happy. "Mom, can you imagine?" she began, panting. "I got second place in swimming. Isn't that great?" Sheila stubbed out her cigarette. She didn't hurry to turn to her daughter. To be honest, while Sophia was at school, her mother truly enjoyed her solitude. She took a bath with aromatic foam and sea salt, took care of her hair, and even managed to paint her nails. No one bothered her with nonsense, no one made noise, no one disturbed her peace. The woman sighed heavily, momentarily imagining how her life would have turned out if she had found out about the pregnancy a couple of weeks earlier. Sheila looked at her child and immediately grimaced. "And what is this? So, you're sacrificing your figure for swimming, building manly shoulders, a back twice as wide as mine." She poked Sophia's flat stomach with her finger, "and in the end, you can't even succeed in sports? Out of all your classmates, you have the worst figure. Logically, since you look like a boy, it means you train the most. And where's the result? Why second place and not first?" Sophia bit her lip. She already regretted sharing the news with her mother. The girl hugged herself and looked at the floor. "My leg cramped at the end of the race." "My girl, that's life." Sheila shook her luxurious hair. "Only winners achieve anything. Your leg cramped. Big deal. You just couldn't push through, that's all. There can be no excuses here." And the girl thought hard. Perhaps it was indeed her fault. She hadn't warmed up properly, and that's why her leg cramped during the race. This wasn't the first time she wasn't good enough for something. Living in such an atmosphere, Sophia gradually absorbed this negative energy. The inner world of a child, which should have been formed in love and support, was filled with a sense of guilt for her own failures. She took every word of her mother as the truth, becoming more convinced of her own inadequacy. This not only damaged her psychological state, but also distorted her perception of herself and the world around her. "God, everyone has normal children, but I have a lunatic," Sheila ranted, noticing marks on her daughter's arms. "Why can't you be normal? Haven't I done enough for you?" "Mom, I just feel bad." "Bad? And what about me? Don't I feel bad? I sacrificed my whole life for you, and all you can do is suffer from nonsense. You don't do anything, you don't finish anything, you don't take care of your appearance." The woman counted on her fingers, leaning over Sophia's bed. "You're just a blank nothing. And you feel bad? What are you tired of? Your classmates go to clubs, sports sections. They do their makeup, pick out clothes, at least treat their pimples. And yet, they walk around, live, have fun, and still have energy for walks. Sheila, red with anger, grabbed her daughter's shoulder. She shook her forcefully and threw her onto the bed. You don't even have friends. You live like a moth, doing nothing. That's why you feel bad, you lazy brat. The constant pressure and stress from such treatment affected every aspect of the girl's life. She found it difficult to make friends because she didn't know how to trust people, fearing they would be like her mother. Her social skills remained underdeveloped, and her self-esteem was extremely low. She tried to withdraw into herself, afraid to express her feelings and thoughts, as every word at home led to a new wave of criticism and humiliation. The girl grew up anxious and insecure. Since late middle school, she tried to hide her inner turmoil and insecurity behind bright, almost surreal makeup and flashy clothes. This was her way of expressing herself and simultaneously protecting herself from the outside world, which seemed extremely hostile and dangerous to her. In nature, if an animal has bright colors, predators avoid it. Only poisonous creatures are brightly colored. Clothes and makeup became her mask, behind which she hid her true feelings and the difficulties she faced at home and school. She liked looking poisonous. As time went on, and as she grew older, the girl found solace in the company of other teenagers whose life stories were similar to her own. These children also grew up in difficult conditions. Many of them felt abandoned, as if they had grown up without parents at all. Together they formed a sort of interest club where everyone could feel accepted. They found comfort in their meetings, where they could freely express themselves without fear of judgment. The only problem was that such groups of teenagers never engaged in anything worthwhile. Come on, drink. The kids crowded around Sophia. The girl, with her usual black lipstick, clung to the bottle. Around her were snack packages, a couple of empty bottles, and blister packs from pills. Sophia no longer understood what they were saying. She had drunk too much. Sophie, 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 her friends shouted, cheering her on. Sophie! You scoundrel, what did you do to your hair? Her mother's voice screamed in her head, just like the day Sophia dyed her hair black. Come on, Sophie. Come on, take it off. Come on. We don't have money as it is, and you're spending it on ugliness. Sheila demanded she remove the piercing for which Sophia had saved up for half a year. Don't hold it in, you hear? You hear me? Vomiting ruins your teeth. At least rinse your mouth after each time. The woman lit a cigarette, standing by the bathroom door, but you're doing well. When I was your age, I was already a model. I know how hard it can be to clean your stomach. Sophia suddenly pulled away from the bottle. The alcohol splashed everywhere. The girl put her hand to her mouth, but it was useless. She bent over, and everything she had drunk came rushing out. Not the most unique outcome of their gatherings. In this difficult company, she met Jason, whose family circumstances also left much to be desired. His relationship with his stepfather, Hugo, had been extremely tense from the beginning. The boy had not yet recovered from the painful divorce of his parents when his mother brought a new man into their home. This person, who unexpectedly became part of his life, started imposing his own rules in the house without hesitation, trying to establish his authority. Listen here, kid, Hugo said on the first day he moved in. I'm the boss here now. Be obedient, and we'll get along. Got it? The stepfather was a strict and demanding man, and his parenting methods were far from kind. He often picked on the boy, criticizing him for any little thing, sometimes without any reason, which only worsened the teenager's state. Such constant taunts and remarks from his stepfather only amplified the feeling of insecurity and rejection that the boy already experienced due to family upheavals. One day, while sitting in the living room in front of the TV, Jay felt a dull pain from a slap on the back of his head. Your mother told you not to turn your socks inside out. What's your problem? What? Socks? The boy grabbed his sore spot. What difference does it make whether they're inside out or not? They're just socks. The man scratched his stubble. He frowned and pursed his lips when his stepson decided to speak again. Listen, don't upset your mother. If she complains to me about you again, you're in trouble, Hugo grinned menacingly. I warned you. Living in such an environment, where every day brought new challenges and conflicts, the boy gradually lost his sense of home comfort and security. His life turned into a constant expectation of the next remark or criticism, which seriously affected his emotional state. This feeling of anxiety and tension became a part of his everyday life, making it impossible for him to relax anywhere. During high school, the tension in the boy's relationship with his stepfather reached a critical point. The conflicts between them became increasingly sharp and often escalated into physical confrontations. The situation was exacerbated by the fact that these incidents didn't stay within the home, they spilled out into the streets, resulting in actual fights. These incidents were so serious that several times the police had to intervene to separate the boy and his stepfather. I'll kill you, old bastard. The boy desperately struggled against the officer's grip. I'll kill you right here. Why the hell are you hitting her? The man, in turn, was sitting on the ground. His brow was split, and his hands had deep cuts. While the police were on their way, he had used all his strength to fend off his stepson with a chair. Hugo, sitting on the ground, pressed a dirty cloth to his cut brow. He looked exhaustedly at his stepson, realizing that the old disciplinary methods that had worked on the whole family before now only fueled the boy's rage. And he no longer had the strength to fight such a fierce opponent. Calm down, son, calm down, one of the officers tried to soothe the raging teenager. Sit down. He's had enough. That evening, Hugo had hit Marta. Sometimes this happened when he was too drunk and she wouldn't let him go for more. But today, the stepson saw the process for the first time, not just the aftermath. And he was not one to be ceremonious. He immediately hit his stepfather with a bottle and then started advancing on him with a shard in his hand. An angry, troubled teenager, who didn't mind fighting with peers in his free time, had become a very dangerous opponent. As in previous times, the situation resolved without a scandal. No one cared about your family squabbles when you lived in a bad neighborhood. The arriving medics treated everyone's wounds, the officers said goodbye to the family, leaving a fine for breaking the noise ordinance, and everyone went their separate ways. As soon as the police and the ambulance left, everyone in Hugo and Marta's house retreated into their thoughts. Jason, sitting on the porch, understood that his actions could have led to more serious consequences, but at that moment, seeing his mother's tears, he couldn't act otherwise. Did he have the right to stay on the sidelines? Marta couldn't stand up to him, neither morally nor physically. Jason had no other choice. He had to defend her, to make his stepfather understand that he could be punished for his cruelty. The boy's mother, in turn, remained indifferent to what was happening in the family. She didn't intervene in the conflicts, ignoring her son's problems and focusing exclusively on her personal life. Marta didn't even care about the beatings. Her priority was her new relationship, not the well-being or psychological state of her child. This lack of attention and support from his mother only intensified the sense of loneliness and misunderstanding that the boy faced daily. The evening descended on the house, filling it with silence, interrupted only by the monotonous noise of the television. Marta, engrossed in her phone, barely noticed her son sitting next to her on the couch. "Mom, we need to talk," his voice trembled with nervousness. Marta snorted, not taking her eyes off the screen. Conversations with her son were unpleasant for her. He always tried to teach her something or ask her for something. But she just wanted a complete family. Was that so hard to understand? "We always need to talk," she muttered, scrolling through the news. "What now?" "You see what's happening, don't you?" He struggled to find the words. "These aren't just fights, this is serious, Mom. He shouldn't be hitting you." "Everything's serious for us," Marta waved him off as if swatting a fly. "I have my own problems, understand? Everyone has their own. And if Hugo raises his hand against me, it doesn't concern you." Jason shook his head, feeling his disappointment turn to hurt. He didn't know how to make his mother understand that a son shouldn't see his mother being hurt. I'm your responsibility too, Mom. Why don't you see that? Marta looked at her son silently. Her gaze remained cold and detached. Deep down, she understood that all of this was wrong. But who else besides Hugo would want a single mother with a child? And unemployed at that. Look at me, Mom. I'm your son. I need your help. For a moment, something like regret flickered in Marta's eyes, but she quickly turned her gaze back to her phone. The last thing she wanted was to let her son know he was right. You'll grow up and have your own kids. And you'll understand that not everything in life is as simple as it seems to you now, she said mechanically, as if justifying her indifference. The son sighed, feeling a growing sadness for the mother he had never truly known. Such a childhood left a deep mark on his personality, forming a constant sense of anxiety and distrust towards others. The lack of a safe and supportive family environment played a decisive role in his social and emotional development, leaving unresolved conflicts and deep emotional wounds. It was quite expected that the bright girl and the rebellious boy would end up together. No one was surprised by this outcome. Sophia and Jason complemented each other well. She constantly got into conflicts and wasn't afraid to stand against others' opinions. He was always ready for a fight, and Sophia's bravery intoxicated him. By the time of Jason's graduation, who was a year older, they had already cemented their reputation as desperate troublemakers. Even the principal refused to deal with them. Mr. Melton, Sophia disrupted the class again. The teary literature teacher began from the doorway. This time she just poured water on me from a bottle. Can you imagine? Just pouring water on a teacher because she got a bad grade. What does she expect if she always comes without her homework done? Why did she behave normally in Mr. Collins' class but turns into a demon in mine? Mr. Melton leaned back in his chair. He consoled himself with the thought that this hell would soon be over. About 3 years ago, there was still some way to manage the troublesome pair, mostly because children are more obedient individually. But as soon as Sophia and Jason teamed up, the scariest part about this pair was that their parents couldn't do anything about them. Even Child Protective Services were powerless. Sophia's mother, Sheila, kept the house clean and orderly, had a stable job, and didn't drink. The only downside was the persistent smell of tobacco in the apartment. The best the teaching staff could achieve was to get Sophia registered at a psychiatric dispensary. As for Martha and Hugo, a complete family, stay-at-home mom, stepfather, a senior sales manager. Child Protective Services only reached their squalid neighborhood once. According to neighbors, after a few minutes of shouting and banging from their house, the women from the services literally ran to their car, and a chair flew after them. Jason also didn't face any issues. He was aggressive, potentially dangerous to society, but hadn't injured anyone severely enough to attract the authorities' attention. Mr. Melton pulled a flask from his breast pocket and took a sip. Mrs. Turner, you know what will happen if we react to this. The man quickly wiped the sweat from his forehead with his handkerchief. We can't touch Sophia. We can't even expel her. That little slug, Jason. He'll make our lives hell, and we won't be able to prove to the cops that it was him. He's cunning, far from stupid. Then what do you suggest we do? Other kids see what she gets away with. They see it and try to imitate. Why did her mother refuse homeschooling? Why does she even come to school if she doesn't want to learn? The teacher sobbed. The principal froze. With quick, trembling fingers, he tried to open the flask again. Before bringing it to his lips, he shot a brief, swift glance at the woman. Oh, Mrs. Turner. She just enjoys tormenting us. And there were many more stories at that school. From scandals to fights. But Mr. Melton was right. Sophia really enjoyed making other people's lives miserable. And Jason gave her a sense of impunity. Outside of the home, she could say whatever came to her mind. She always had a boyfriend with uncontrollable aggression and a thirst for violence ready to come to her aid. The boy and girl, having reached adulthood, started living together, renting an apartment, and planning their future together, including a possible wedding. However, despite outward signs of growing up, they remained the same teenagers at heart. Their life continued to revolve around endless parties with cheap alcohol. They changed jobs like gloves. Most often, they were fired for disciplinary reasons. The household chores in their apartment were ignored and became a source of arguments. "Damn it, Sophia!" Jason roared, standing in the kitchen. "I asked you to unpack the bags. Now all the ice cream has melted. God! It's soaked into the bread. Come here and look at the mess in the bag." A disgruntled girl rounded the corner. Her hair was disheveled. It was obvious that she had simply been sleeping on her day off, not thinking about anything. "Couldn't you have done it yourself?" "Sophia." Jason straightened up to his full height and threw a bag into his girlfriend's hands. "I'm working today. I came, left the bags of groceries, and went to my shift. By the way, I went to the store. It was your turn." Sophia rolled her eyes and snorted. She didn't like it when Jason played daddy. The girl turned and headed to the bathroom, just placing the bag on the floor. She wasn't in the mood for a conversation. "By the way, I spent money on groceries, Sophia." The arguments between them over household chores, such as going to the store or taking out the trash, often escalated into prolonged conflicts that could last for weeks. During this time, the trash bag would grow ominously larger and start to emit an unpleasant smell because neither wanted to compromise. This situation symbolized a broader problem in their relationship, their inability to take responsibility and share household duties, which only increased their mutual irritation and dissatisfaction. The couple's life constantly balanced between wanting to enjoy youth without limits and the necessity of taking on the responsibilities of adult life. Their situation with food also left much to be desired. Neither Jason nor Sophia had the skills or desire to learn how to cook, leading to a diet primarily consisting of fast food and convenience meals. This lifestyle inevitably affected their health, causing regular complaints of stomach aches and other digestive issues. Around the house, there were often packages from instant noodles and ready-made meals that could be quickly heated in the microwave. Dinners often consisted of orders for pizza or hamburgers, sparking new waves of mutual accusations about who should pay and how much. These meals rarely included anything healthy or nutritious, making their diet extremely monotonous and unhealthy. Sophia pushed the pizza box away, pursing her lips in irritation. Jason, leaning lazily on the table, stared at his half-empty glass of soda. "Pizza again, Jay. Aren't you tired of it?" Sophia said, looking at him with displeasure. Jason shrugged, grimacing from heartburn. "What can we do? Neither of us can be bothered with pots and pans. It's just easier this way. I don't know about you, but I'm starting to feel like it's affecting my health," she continued, massaging her stomach. "Come on, it's not every day. Well, almost not every day," Jason smirked, trying to lighten the mood. "You do realize our stomachs aren't made of iron, right? Or are you planning to spend the rest of your life on antacids?" Sophia raised an eyebrow, waiting for his response. Jason sighed, shifting uncomfortably on his chair. "So what do you suggest? We both know cooking isn't our thing. I don't know, keep living as we are. But sometimes it feels like we chose the wrong path, you know?" Sophia looked down, reflecting on their lifestyle. Jason moved closer to her, touching her hand. "Everything will be fine, Soph. We'll manage. We always have pizza," he said with a warm smile, trying to cheer her up. Sophia smiled back. She brought her cup of hot tea closer. It always made her stomach feel a bit better. Deep down, they had never truly become independent adults. Despite the outward signs of adult life, such as having their own place and jobs, they remained vulnerable and underloved, just as they were in their childhoods. This internal immaturity and lack of independence manifested in their inability to take care of themselves. They couldn't even take care of their own diet, let alone other responsibilities. But no one pointed out this problem directly to them, so they continued living in their closed loop, unaware of the full seriousness of their situation and not seeing the need for change. This created an illusion of normalcy until the consequences of their lifestyle increasingly made themselves felt. One warm spring day, while strolling through a cozy city park, the couple came across an unkempt old man. He was sitting on a bench, with a small tin can with some coins and a cardboard sign that read in large letters, "For food." The man's appearance and tired eyes spoke volumes. It was clear he was homeless. His clothes were worn and dirty, and his gaze seemed absent and lost. "Spare some change for an old man's food," the beggar mumbled almost incoherently. Seeing his condition, the couple somehow decided it would be funny to prank the old man. They approached closer, and without thinking about the consequences, Sophia lightly kicked the can, causing the coins to scatter loudly across the pavement. This unexpected action startled the old man, who quickly stood up. However, he couldn't take a step towards his coins. The shock and confusion from such behavior from young people paralyzed him. "What are you? Why would you do that?" The old man stood there, clasping his hands and staring at the scattered coins, his eyes the mix of pain, surprise, and disappointment. He clearly hadn't expected such treatment, especially in a place meant to be associated with peace and relaxation. The young people's action struck at his dignity and sense of safety. "What's the matter, drunkard? Can't gather your pennies? Get a job, you slob," Sophia sneered cruelly. Her words were like salt in the wound for the elderly man, who already felt vulnerable and destitute. His eyes, wet with tears, looked up at the girl. In them, one could see immense pain and disappointment in strangers who had decided to mock him so harshly. The old man tried to hold back his tears, suppressing his emotions, but it was clear that the hurt had struck deep into his soul. At that moment, the elderly man took off his worn-out hat and pressed it to his chest, as if trying to find comfort in the gesture. His demeanor and expression conveyed deep insult mixed with a sense of complete helplessness. He looked as though every cell in his body was ready to burst into tears from the pain caused by these thoughtless and cruel words. The old man's words began to falter, his speech slurred. "I fought, for the future, for the children. I was wounded by shrapnel." The old man paused, sobbing painfully. "I worked like everyone else. I was wounded in the war. I can't work anymore. Why are you doing this?" But his words were met with only cold indifference from the young couple. The girl didn't even try to hide her contempt, adding a few more hurtful words that only deepened his emotional pain. "Sober up first, then talk to people." Then, frowning from the insult and anger, the old man jerked out a tattered photo from the inner pocket of his shabby vest. Despite their obvious distrust, the young couple glanced at it. The photograph showed a stately man in his 40s, stern and commanding respect. Comparing this photo to the old man before them, the young people couldn't deny it really was him, just many years ago. They instantly paled at the realization that standing before them was their former history teacher, the man who had once taught them to understand history. Mr. Collins? Adam Collins? He was the kind of teacher who stood out with his approach to teaching. Unlike his colleagues, who often instilled fear or irritation in students, this man tried to impart knowledge about his subject to each of them, making the lessons interesting and comprehensible. He did not evoke fear or anger among the students, who at that time didn't yet know each other well, despite studying under the same roof. He was the one who could unite the class, make the children think and analyze, rather than just memorize material. Knowing world history means building your own. It's not just useless dates, but a lesson taught to us by the past. I don't make you learn everything, but I demand that you delve into events, accept and understand their importance. However, the encounter in the park made them see their former teacher in a new light. Seeing him in such a state, sitting on a park bench begging for alms, raised a question for many. Why was their beloved teacher here, in this situation, instead of continuing to teach and inspire within the school walls? This question tormented them, causing mixed feelings, from surprise and bewilderment to pain and compassion. Could it be, is this why you disappeared? Sophia asked quietly, barely audibly. They didn't even tell us why you decided to leave, Jason added bitterly. The young people, remembering how this teacher had found a way to engage each student and spark their interest in the subject, couldn't understand how such a valuable educator could end up in such a situation. They began to realize that behind the facade of school life could lie complex and tragic stories they had never suspected. This knowledge cast a heavy shadow over their school memories, making them think about many things, including the importance of attention and support they could have offered their teacher at that moment. Children. I really did fight, children, Mr. Collins said more clearly now. I thought it wouldn't catch up with me. But it did, years later. It turned out that the story of their former teacher was much more complicated and tragic than the young people could have imagined. Before becoming a teacher, he had served in the army and participated in combat in a hot spot. Right after university, still young and healthy. This period of his life left an indelible mark on his fate. During one of the battles, he received a serious injury. A piece of shrapnel hit him in the head and lodged in his skull. The situation was extremely complex, and the surgeons deemed the operation too risky. The risk of damaging a major vessel and causing irreversible consequences outweighed the potential benefits of removing the shrapnel. Mr. Collins? Mr. Collins, can you hear me? The man had been delirious for several days. The doctors had managed to stabilize his condition, but Adam still felt as though he had been run over by a tank. He struggled to open his eyes, and the image of his attending physician appeared before him. The soldier blinked, letting the doctor know that his words were getting through. Adam, listen. There's a piece of shrapnel in your head. About this size. The doctor gestured with his hands to show the approximate size of the foreign object. Right now, it's not threatening you. It hasn't hit anything vital. You have a very strong guardian angel, Adam. Ideally, foreign objects shouldn't be left in a patient's body. But your case is different. We can try to remove the shrapnel, but I'm afraid you might bleed out due to the proximity of major vessels. Or you could end up disabled. The soldier tried to say something, but he barely had the strength. No, he didn't want to drool for the rest of his life. He had been in the hospital for a week already, and he was sick of his own weakness. Leave it. I want to live normally. Understood, sir. That's what we needed to hear. After the incident in the army, he was honorably discharged and awarded several military decorations for valor and heroism. Returning to civilian life, he decided to pursue his profession and became a teacher. This career choice was a chance for him to start a new life where he could be of service by educating and mentoring the youth. No more bloody skirmishes, no more wars and deaths. Just children who needed a mentor in this life. So, you just decided to dedicate your life to other people's children? Jay sat down next to the veteran. We didn't even know you had fought in a war. We thought you were just a strict teacher. Ha, now that seems funny. The girl suddenly tugged at a lock of his hair. She pouted her plump lips and stared directly into her boyfriend's surprised eyes. And what's so funny about that? We've already had our laugh. Her voice trembled, but she quickly composed herself. Don't be a clown now. Jason frowned and gave the girl a stern look. The old man, however, just continued his story, taking long pauses to catch his breath. Everything was going relatively well in the teacher's life until one day, passing by the school sports field, an unfortunate incident occurred. A group of children were playing soccer, and one of the balls, kicked too hard, accidentally hit the teacher right in the head. The blow was unexpected and strong enough to cause serious consequences. But stronger than the hit by the ball was the hit by his head on the ground. Not expecting any trouble, the elderly man just staggered and fell. The teacher was immediately taken to the emergency room, where doctors conducted the necessary examinations. The tests revealed that a severe inflammatory process had begun around the shrapnel lodged in his skull. This condition was extremely dangerous and required immediate intervention. In the emergency room, Mr. Collins, feeling a headache, gently touched the back of his head, looking at the doctor with expectation. "What's wrong with me, doctor?" "Why does my head hurt so much?" he asked quietly, his eyes reflecting concern. Dr. Harris, closing the folder with the MRI results, stepped closer. His gaze was serious, and he chose his words with particular caution. "Mr. Collins, your condition is concerning. The recent impact has aggravated the inflammatory process around the shrapnel that has been lodged in your skull for the past 20 years. This is extremely dangerous, and we need to act quickly to avoid further complications." Mr. Collins sank into thought, his face growing paler. He remembered the day he was wounded, and now all this was coming back to haunt him with renewed force. The man had hoped the war had left him in peace. But I don't have the funds for the surgery, Doc, he said grimly, lowering his eyes. "My pension and teacher's salary, they barely cover my current expenses." Dr. Harris nodded, full of sympathy for his situation. "I understand, it's indeed a difficult situation. But we will find a way to help you, Mr. Collins. There are assistance programs that can cover the cost of the surgery. We won't leave you in trouble. Right now, the main thing is your health." But a miracle didn't happen. Assistance programs are a great opportunity to find funds to save a life. Only they work when a person has time. Time for the queue. Adam soon learned that he was number 243. In plain language, he would have to wait at least 3 years. The teacher's financial situation left much to be desired. All he could afford were medications that only slowed the inflammation and provided some relief, but didn't solve the problem radically. These circumstances placed him in a tough spot and limited his options in fighting the disease. For a while after the ball incident, the teacher could still continue working at the school, trying to maintain his usual routine. However, his condition rapidly deteriorated. Within just a year, his health significantly worsened, his vision started to decline sharply, his speech became unclear and hesitant, and his fingers barely obeyed commands from his brain, seriously complicating any physical activity. Added to these physical ailments were unbearable headaches and memory problems, which manifested in sudden lapses, forgetfulness, and the inability to concentrate on any task. This incessant headache made his life unbearable. It interfered with normal sleep and active wakefulness. All these symptoms made it impossible to continue working. He could no longer manage a class, maintain order, or teach effectively. "I remember last year I disrupted your class," Sophia interrupted Mr. Collins's story, then lowered her tear-filled eyes to the ground. "You spoke quieter than usual and almost didn't scold us. I thought there was nothing you could do." The girl began to sob quietly. Yes, she loved making other people's lives unbearable. But Mr. Collins, he always wished her well. He never scolded without reason, never pressured her. It was as if he was born to work with troubled teenagers. Sophia felt someone take her hand. Looking at her with faded, red eyes was the old man. And in those pale eyes, she saw no reproach, only understanding. Understanding that sometimes she couldn't control herself. The silent scene was interrupted by Jason, who turned away from the teacher and his girlfriend. He was smoking but mainly didn't want Sophia to see that he was also on the verge of tears. Mr. Collins, the man who had become like a father. "Sophia, get up." After the incident with the coin jar, when the young people realized who this old man truly was, a silent understanding passed between them. Without any further words, Jay began to gather the scattered coins that Sophia had spilled. Bending down to the ground, they carefully picked up each coin, trying to restore the little that the old man had. Once they had collected all the money, they handed the jar back to Mr. Collins and took him by the arms. Mr. Collins squeezed Sophia's hand, his gaze tired but kind. "Sophie, I know you didn't mean it. We all make mistakes sometimes." His voice was calm and forgiving. Sophia sniffled, feeling guilty. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Collins. You were always so kind to me, and I just didn't think. I didn't know," she whispered, looking into his eyes. Mr. Collins smiled, and warmth appeared in his tired eyes. "It's okay, Sophie. I understand. It's not easy to see the consequences of your actions. Suddenly his voice had the old timbre, just for a moment, but that's how people grow up. Jason, walking a little distance away, was smoking and trying to hide his emotions. He felt himself on the verge of tears. "We'll take you home, Mr. Collins." "It's already getting dark," he said, trying to steady his voice. The old man's gaze gratefully shifted from Sophia to Jason. The silence between them was filled with mutual understanding and relief. The young people didn't have much food in their apartment, but they decided they had to feed their unexpected guest. Using the available ingredients, pasta, sausage, and eggs, the old man managed to prepare a simple but hearty dinner. Though cooking was difficult for him due to his physical condition and fatigue, the young people actively helped him, supporting and providing the necessary ingredients. After dinner, considering his fatigue and physical state, they made up a bed for him on the couch in the living room, creating a cozy place for him to rest. The old man, surrounded by warmth and care, felt a mix of emotions. He was grateful for the attention and care, but at the same time, he wondered why they hadn't let him go home. However, he didn't argue or ask to leave. Fatigue took over, and he simply gave in to the circumstances, allowing himself to rest a bit in the company of people who had suddenly shown him so much kindness. The next morning, as the first light of dawn gently lit up the kitchen, Mr. Collins sat at the table, slowly sipping tea. Sophia and Jason, having finished their preparations, joined him, each with a cup in hand. Sophia, a bit nervous, started the conversation. "Mr. Collins, we thought about it and decided to offer you help with the surgery. It's important to all of us." She paused, searching for an answer in his eyes. Mr. Collins slowly put down his cup and responded with a slight smile. "I appreciate your care, children. But I can't accept your help. It's too much, and Jason, interrupting him, insisted. "But why, Mr. Collins? You always taught us to help others. Why can't you let us do the same for you?" The old man sighed, looking at his wrinkled hands. "I always tried to be strong. Admitting that I need help is hard. I don't want to be a burden to you." Sophia took his hand, her voice trembling with sincerity. "You will never be a burden to us, Mr. Collins. You are our teacher, you always supported us. Let us do the same for you. It's our way of saying thank you." Mr. Collins slowly lifted his eyes, gratitude flickering in them. The veteran, accustomed to independence and self-reliance, initially refused the offered help. He was deeply moved by their care, but his pride and desire not to burden others with his problems prevented him from accepting the gesture. The situation became emotionally overwhelming, and eventually, he couldn't hold back his tears. A life that made him increasingly weak and vulnerable each day had become unbearable. The constant battle with physical and emotional pain drained him both internally and externally. "You know, Sophie, it's torture." His hands suddenly trembled, and the tea threatened to spill from his cup. "I'm only 57. In 2 years, I've withered away. I look like an old man, and you didn't even recognize me." Seeing his reflection in the mirror had become especially painful for him. Seeing himself old and worn out at just 57 felt dreadful. This sight reminded him of how mercilessly time and circumstances had changed him, leaving only a shadow of the person he once was. For the first time, seeing the man who had always seemed strong to them cry, the young people couldn't stay where they were. They both stood up and approached Mr. Collins from both sides, enveloping him in a hug. "We can and want to help, Mr. Collins," Sophia managed through her tears. "Your care truly touches me," he said, finally giving in to the warmth of their sincerity. "Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time to accept help." This decision opened a new chapter in his life. A month after their conversation, he decided to sell his apartment, which allowed him to gather the necessary amount for the surgery. The sale of the property was successful, and the deal was closed quickly and efficiently. If it weren't for the young people, he wouldn't have dared to take this step. Where would he have lived otherwise? A month after selling his apartment, the old man successfully underwent surgery. The operation went smoothly, and the doctors were satisfied with the results. The remaining money after covering medical expenses was transferred to a savings account that the old man opened for future needs. Neither party expressed any desire to claim these funds, confirming their genuine intentions to help. Why would Sophia and Jason need this money? They both had jobs and were living well. The recovery process after the surgery was challenging. Mr. Collins' body, already aged and weakened by years of hardship, faced serious challenges. However, despite all the difficulties, he courageously overcame the stages of rehabilitation, finding the strength and desire to return to an active life. The young people, in turn, demonstrated exceptional care and support. They warmly welcomed him into their apartment after his discharge from the hospital. The question of where the old man would live during his recovery didn't even come up. It was understood. They welcomed him into their home with open arms, providing not only a roof over his head but also the warmth of their hearts, which became a great support in his battle for health and well-being. In the evening, when Mr. Collins returned home after being discharged, tired but with relief in his eyes, he turned to Sophia and Jason. "Thank you both. I still can't believe you did all this for me. How can I ever repay you?" Sophia smiled gently, handing him a cup of hot tea. She hadn't even noticed how clean dishes had become a constant presence in their apartment. Before, finding a dirty cup somewhere in the rooms was a challenge. "Mr. Collins, you've already given us more than enough just by teaching us in school. We're not doing this for gratitude. We believe it's the right thing to do," she said, resting her chin on her hand. "You know, of all the teachers, you were the only one who believed in us. You didn't scold or humiliate us. You didn't even teach us, you were just there. And that was enough for us to do well in your subject. Well, and not cause trouble in class. I don't know how Jay behaved in his class." Jason, sitting opposite on a chair, added, "Yeah, and besides, helping others is what you taught us. Now it's our turn to take care of you. You always talked about the importance of unity and mutual support. Even gave examples from history. Some of them were even scary to me," Sophia added. "I don't like war stories." Mr. Collins nodded, taking a deep breath. "I always hoped my lessons would resonate in your hearts, but I never expected them to manifest in this way. It means a lot to me, more than I could ask for." Their conversation continued for a long time, intertwining memories of school days with plans for the future. The fabric of their talk was rich with warmth and understanding, highlighting the new depth of their relationship. A year after the old man moved in with the young people, it became a period of significant changes for everyone. Inspired by the old man's example and support, the young people finally changed their lifestyle. They left behind their chaotic habits, stopped drinking alcohol, and began looking for stable jobs, aiming to secure a more confident and orderly future. Moreover, the responsibility for the old man's well-being added seriousness to their daily lives. At home, they were always greeted by the grandfather, who became the true keeper of family comfort. He made the best pancakes in the world, and every return home was accompanied by the aromas of freshly cooked homemade food. Adam, whose health significantly improved after the surgery and recovery period, no longer felt the need to return to school. He found that tutoring suited him much better as it allowed him to work on his own schedule and maintain the necessary level of activity without overexertion. Naturally, Sophia and Jason had to spend some time teaching Grandpa how to use social media. How else would he find students? The old man found joy in staying home, receiving children for lessons, and spending time caring for his unexpectedly acquired grandchildren, whom he cherished dearly, treating them to goodies. This new role as a mentor and careful guardian of the home brought him much satisfaction and joy. Every morning, when Sophia and Jason walked into the kitchen, they were greeted by the warm aroma of freshly baked goodies. Adam was already at the stove, carefully flipping golden toasts. "There you are, children," Adam greeted them with a smile through the steam rising from the pan. "Today I have something special for you." Sophia approached the table and carefully placed a piece of hot pie on her plate. "You always say you have something special for us," she replied with a smile, spreading cherry jam on the pie. And every time, it's true. Jason, pouring himself some coffee, glanced toward Grandpa Adam. He now worked in the IT department. The job was stable, with room for growth. He felt more responsible, more grown up. It was hard to describe in words, but one thing was certain: there was no room for nonsense in his mind anymore. He smiled at Adam. "How are your lessons going, Grandpa? Have the students mastered all your historical thrillers yet?" Adam winked, setting the pan aside. "Oh, these young minds are so sharp," he began enthusiastically. "And thanks to your course on social networks, I don't even have to leave the house to find them. It's like opening a new world right from my chair. Can you imagine? Members of the parent committee from our school recently contacted me. Now my former students bring their children to me. It's a miracle." "Well then," said Jason, placing a hand on Adam's shoulder, "we're always ready to help you with the computer. You helped us find our way in this world when we were, let's say, not the most obedient kids." The entire incident in the park turned out to be a kind of turning point for everyone. For the young people, the old man became not just a savior but a reminder that everyone is capable of change for the better. They, once embittered children angry at the world, suddenly realized that they needed someone to care for them, to show them the right path, and to give them hope. The presence of the old man, who managed to become a true relative and mentor to them, transformed their lives, filling them with meaning and